There you go. Good. Okay, so here we go. Yosef and his brothers are now together, but the brothers don't know that Yosef is their brother. They don't recognize it. And Yosef is making it hard for them. And he has declared that I'm going to take Benjamin, the youngest brother, the one that his father really loves, and his old father is going to be brokenhearted, and I'm taking him from it. You can all go, says Yosef. You can go back home. I'm taking Benjamin. And Yehuda steps forward and he says, you can't do it. Please have mercy. Take me. Do anything. I'll do anything you want. So Yosef says, okay, fellas, I'm Yosef. Here I am. I'm Yosef. And they just are astounded. They don't know what to say. And he says, I've forgiven you. Don't worry it. Don't worry. Because you sold me, so it ended up they saved the whole world. If you wouldn't have sold me, we would all be dead now. So you did a really good thing. I have nothing in my heart against you. This was God's will. This is what God wants. Okay, so from this we can learn a couple of very interesting, very practical lessons. Number one, it could be that the person that you really hate the most is going to be the one that's going to save the whole world. You can't tell. Number two, even if you're the person that everybody hates, but it could be that this is exactly what God wants and that big things are waiting for you. And you're going to, so don't return hate with hatred. That's what it says also in the Tanya, in the end of the 12th chapter of the Tanya. Don't be, you should be like Yosef with his brothers, forgive them from what they did. And also another thing that it could be that because of this, it could be that the worse the tragedy, the greater will be the miracle and the salvation that's going to come from it. So let's start over here. Here we go. So Yosef starts yelling and crying, and he says, oh, yeah. Good. Hey, we have, yes, okay. So Yosef is saying, here we go. Let's try to do this quickly because I want to get to this big Kli Yakar that's going to be in the end. So Yosef says, now you did not send me down. He tells his brothers, you didn't send me here. But God, he made me a teacher, a father, whatever, a teacher, a provider for Paro. This is Yosef saying, right, to his brothers. And a master on all of his house, and a ruler of all of Egypt. If you wouldn't have sold me down here, it would have never happened. There he says, Av means like a friend and a patron, a helper. So now he says, okay, listen, my brothers, hurry up, bring my father down here and tell him that this is what your son said, Yosef. God has made me to a master of all Egypt. Come down, don't delay. Don't delay. And you come down to me, you'll live in a place called Goshen, and you'll be near to me, you and your sons and your grandsons and your sheep and your cattle and everything you have. It says, why the Rambam says, what Yosef knew that his father wouldn't want to live in Egypt. And that there is this big country and the kingship. Therefore, he sent him, he said, now listen, you're going to live in a place called Goshen. And you'll be living there. You won't be among the Egyptians. And also, you'll come down to me and your sons and your grandsons and everything. You'll be able to grow over here in Egypt. Don't worry about it. And Yosef is continuing to his brothers and saying, go back to my father and tell my father, Yaakov, otcha. I will provide for you there in the land of Goshen, because there's still 5 years left of hunger, right? There's already passed. Yosef has been now in Egypt. He's been away from his father for 22 years, 22 years. And now we have 7 years of plenty have passed, and 2 years of hunger have started, right? Wiping everything out, wiped out. There's nothing to eat. Only thing that was left in Egypt to eat, and the whole world to eat, was the grains that Yosef stored up. He says, no, there's 5 more years to come. It ends up that when Yaakov comes, it stops the famine. It says the Nile River rose up to meet him. Yeah, so he says, there's 5 more years of hunger, as don't become poor, you and your family and everything you have. In other words, come down, Tivoresh means to become poor. That's what Rashi says. And now you can see, your eyes will be able to see me, and you'll see Benjamin, because my mouth is speaking to them. Okay, this is speaking to you. Okay, so what happens? He's continuing. Tell my father about everything you saw over here, how I am so big in Egypt, and everything you see, and hurry up and bring my father down here. Now, one of the reasons he has to hurry up is because his father had finished his punishment. What type of punishment? His father, and there was Yaakov, did not honor his father Yitzchak properly for the 22 years that he was working by Lavan and etc. So now he says the 22 years is finished. You can come now. Remember, we learned that sicha about it last week. We learned. Why did Yosef say, "Is my father still alive?" No, I'm sorry. We learned that in the beginning of this week. We learned this Sunday and Monday. We learned that. Why did Yosef ask, "Is my father still alive?" Right? Because his father was suffering. So he said, "Immediately come down." So he fell on the neck of Benjamin, and he cried, and Benjamin wept on his neck. Okay, really, here I would really like to take a little time over here, if we can do. There's a beautiful sikha by the Rebbe about this. What's going on? Yosef now fell and he wept on the neck, in other words, on the shoulders, the neck of Benjamin, his brother. He fell on his neck and he wept, and Benjamin, he wept on his neck. What's going on? What do you mean he wept on his neck? What's going on? What is a neck? So he says the neck represents the holy temple. Rashi says, he al tzavare, on the necks of Benjamin. On the necks of Benjamin. The neck, the neck that holds your throat and everything. So he wept on the 2 necks of Benjamin. What that mean? He's got 2 necks. What does it mean? He says, he wept, Yosef wept on the 2 holy temples. The 2 holy temples were built in the area of Yosef and Benjamin. Remember, I told you that after King Solomon died, that the kingdom was split. Well, the upper kingdom, which was run by Yerovam and Nevat, they worshipped idols. And the lower kingdom, which was only 2 tribes, Yehuda and Benjamin, that was where the holy temple was. And Yosef was the upper 10 tribes. It was the other tribes. That was the Ephraim. And that's what we learned in Chassidut in the morning. And so he said that Yosef wept on the necks of his brother. What is the necks? The 2 temples. Why are the 2 temples compared to a neck? Because what does the neck do? It joins the head and the body. That's what the holy temple does. It joins between God, who is the head and the life force of the whole world, with the body, with the world. So he wept. And Benjamin, he wept on Yosef's one neck. What? Mishkan Shiloh. On the tabernacles was in Shiloh, that it was there on Shiloh. She'atid liot bechelko shel Yosef is going to be in the portion of Yosef, and the end is going to be destroyed in the future. Okay, so the Rebbe asked the question, one second, why didn't each one just weep on their own? It says that Benjamin wept for the two destructions of the temple that are going to be in, I'm sorry. Yosef wept on the two destructions of the temple that were in Benjamin's area. And Benjamin, he only wept once on the destruction of the tabernacle that was going to be in Shiloh. And the tabernacle, by the way, stood over there, what was it, 369 days or something? Years, 369 years in Shiloh. That was in the time of the judges, right before King Solomon. So that was also destroyed. That was the whole story with Eli and that he wept and the prophet. So the Rebbe says the reason that Yosef wept on Benjamin's two temples that were destroyed, and he didn't weep on his own, because Yosef was helpless to help his brother. He was helpless to help this temple. Just one second. Hello. Shalom. ברוך השם, אני מוסר שיעור עכשיו. אנחנו לומדים הלילה, כן? איזה שעה? 7? נעשה 7. להתראות. My telephone does whatever it wants to. See this? Okay. Okay, so it said, I'm sorry, Yosef wept on the two temples that were in the area of Benjamin, because all he could do was weep. He couldn't do anything to fix it up, to make it different. It wasn't in his area. And which is not the case. The tabernacle that was in his area, as Yosef could do something about it. He could pray, he could whatever. The same thing, it comes to teach you that if you see somebody else in trouble and there's nothing you can do, you can't help him, at least cry, at least feel bad, at least, but if anytime you can do something to help, as you should do, crying is simply not enough. Okay. Continue, let us continue. So he kissed all of his brothers and he wept for them, and then his brothers spoke with him. Yosef is now sending them away, right? The voices here heard in the whole place of Paro that the brothers of Yosef came, and Paro liked the idea, and all of his servants. So what did Paro do? We're not going to have enough time to do this. Okay. So Paro said to brother, go back and tell your brothers that this is what you do, that when your father comes, he's going to really be welcome. You should bring your father, and I'll give all the land of Eretz, whatever he wants, I'm going to give him. If it wasn't for Yosef, that the whole place would be destroyed anyway. And this is what you do. Take from the land of Israel, agalot l'tapchem, wagons for your children and your wives, and bring your father back here. And don't worry, take everything you want, take all the best, bring it to your father. Okay, now here it goes. They finally reached their father. Listen to this. The sons of Yisrael did what they said, and Yosef gave them these agalot, these wagons, according to Paro, and he also gave them a lot of food for the trip. To each one he gave garments, and to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of gold, silver, and 5 units of garments. And it was 5 times more garments. Okay. And to his father he sent like this, donkeys and all the good stuff of Egypt. Okay, so he sent the brothers and he said, don't argue on the way, don't argue about Torah ideas. In other words, just travel straight, okay? And bring your father and come straight back to Egypt. Tell your father that Yosef is still alive. Everything's going to be wonderful. Listen to this. So they went to their father. They said the words of Yosef that he said to them. And his father saw the agalot. He saw these wagons that Yosef sent. V'techi ruach Yaakov. And the spirit of Yaakov was enlivened. Okay, so what does it mean? And that he saw all these wagons, and they're all filled with all sorts of goods and all sorts of good things. And the brothers said, your Yosef is still alive and is the king. So he saw all the wagons and they had all this good in it. And he realized that they're telling the truth. Right? It was very amazing. He couldn't believe it. We'll see the next sentences. He couldn't believe it. But Yafeg, Libo, says, Ravo Sechayel, I'll go and I'll see him before I die. Okay. Let's go back now. Let's go back here. What happens over here? Yosef, he saw that he, there's one sentence I think we skipped here, the sentence. It says, they told his father, and they said, Yosef is still alive. He's ruling over Egypt. The Yafeg Libo, and his heart was like going back and forth because he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. It would be amazed just to hear that Yosef was alive. That would be hard enough to believe. But he's the king of Egypt. Couldn't believe it. So, but when he saw these the wagons, so he believed the agalot. He saw the wagons. So now he believes. But Yarat agalot. He saw the wagons that Yosef sent, and he believes. Watch what Rashi says. They told him the words of Yosef that he spoke, and when Yaakov saw the wagons that Yosef sent, then he believed. Okay, says Rashi, Simon Masalam, that he gave to the brothers a sign. B'ma haya osuk, what he was occupied in, kishiyafrish mimenu, when he separated from his father. Namely, the Parshat Egla Arufa. The word agalot, he saw the agalot, means that he saw the wagons, right? So Rashi seems to say no. The word agala also means a cow, egla, a calf. There's this weird law in the Torah called the Egla Arufa. And the law of Egla Arufa is that if you find a dead body laying between two cities, a Jewish person, and you don't know who killed him, so the law is that the city that's closest to the dead person has to bring a calf, and they break its neck by a river. It's a whole process. And they say, we didn't spill this blood. It's not our fault. Now, if you remember, how did Yosef separate from his father? It says his father sent him to see his brothers, right? His brothers were tending the sheep in Shechem, and he sent Yosef to see his brothers. Yaakov sent Yosef. A very strange thing to do because he knew that his brothers hated him, but nevertheless he sent them. No. So it says, what were they talking about before they parted? They were talking about this law of Egla Arufa. Why were they talking about this? We'll see in the Kli Yakar. I don't know if we're going to get to this. The law of the Egla Arufa, like I just explained to you, it goes like this. The wise men of the city that this dead body was closest to, they say they have to bring the cow, break its neck, and they say, we did not spill this blood. And they explain, what does it mean we did not spill this blood? we didn't let him leave the city without escorting him. We escorted him. So there was the same thing. Yosef, when his father told him to go and see his brothers, was 22 years ago. His father escorted him, and Yosef said to his father, listen, father, you don't have to escort me so far. And his father said, no, don't you know, it's a big mitzvah to escort. And even more, if you don't do it, there's a big punishment for it. That's the whole thing of the calf, the eglah, with a broken neck. And that's what it means, vayaras the agalot. That's what it means that he saw the agalot. What's agalot? Agalot means the wagons. And when he saw the agalot, the wagons, he realized that this word agalot is also similar to the word eglah, which is a calf that Yosef said. And then he realized that's really strange. I mean, that's really strange. Why didn't Yosef just send them a calf? He could have sent them a calf. Why did he have to send them? He saw a wagon and he remembered from the wagon that they were talking about something else that was talking about. The whole thing doesn't really make any sense. And he was, so we have over here a long kliyakar, and we just don't have the time to do it. But what I would like to tell you is like this. Listen, so what he says is like this. What does it say over here? This is what the kliyakar says. What does it say? It says, when he saw the agalot, asher shalach Yosef, that Yosef sent. Okay, so he says, what does this mean? He saw the wagons. The wagons. Why did that make him remember about the cow? He said, because he saw the wagons and they told him that Yosef sent the wagons. In other words, this means that Yosef must have escorted them. That Yosef was the one who sent. It wasn't the wagons that Paro sent. Yosef specially sent them off with his wagons. This implies that he escorted them. When they said that these are the wagons that Yosef sent, so the father understood, wow, Yosef must have escorted them out of Egypt, even though he didn't have to do it. He's the big king. That they escorted them, it must be that he remembered this law that we learned about that you must escort someone. Levaya, that's what he says this. So he said, this is not like what Rashi says that he saw the wagons and he remembered the cow, right? But what did he see? Or that he saw the cow, or he saw it means that as soon as his father saw that these wagons had been sent by Yosef, so then that reminded him that this was the sign that this is what they had been discussing when they parted. Namely, that it's very, very important to escort someone when you say goodbye from them, if you're sending them from your city or whatever. Anyways, another also beautiful explanation, but I wanted to learn the Mishnah. Here he says, there's another reason. There's that, and he brings up also finally in the end, Olot Ephraim. He brings up a very beautiful explanation, but let's learn at least this. Another reason, Yesh Makom Loma, we can say that this mitzvah, min ha-muskalot, this is a very deep mitzvah that we have to understand. In Cain, so, in Raya Mina Levaya, there's no proof just for the fact that he escorted him, that Yosef escorted his brothers. Maybe Moshel, Shema Moshel Oretz, Hahu Ish Tzadik, Ba'asa Levaya Lahem Mitzad Shu Davar Shasechel Miskaya. Maybe he didn't do it because of the mitzvah. Maybe whoever's ruling over the land of Egypt, it's just logical that you should escort someone if you're sending him out. Remember, in those days, there was no highways or police or surveillance cameras. You sent the person out of the city, he was alone. There were all sorts of marauders and things like that. So it could be that whoever was the leader of this country, it could be that he sent them away and he escorted them because it's logical to do so. A person that doesn't escort a guest, it's like he's spilling blood. Therefore, it's fit to do to anyone who's going, not just their brothers. But when Yaakov saw the the wagons that Yosef sent Shalach, the Livia, and that he escorted them, then Yaakov said, "Oh, now I know that this person is not escorting them because of just some logical reason, because it's practical to do so." What happens? Listen, if you send somebody away and you don't escort them, so if there happen to be robbers or marauders or something, so they'll think, listen, this person, if I do something to him, no one's going to take vengeance on him. Nobody even cares about him. But if you escort him, so they'll know people are going to be worried. They're probably worried about when he arrives and when he this. So therefore, he's a little more safe. And that's if the person is alone. But as soon as Yaakov saw that these wagons had been escorted by Yosef, the wagons that sent Yosef, then he knew it wasn't logical anymore. This is according to the Torah, not because of logic. Why? Because in all of Egypt, in all of Egypt, the only ones that have chariots or wagons are paro, because the wagons are usually used for war. Like it says, Vayitain lim Yosef agalot al pi paro. It says earlier that Yosef gave them these wagons according to Paro. Paro was willing to relinquish these wagons. So it says that these wagons must be specially for the king. In other words, the king, he had to allocate these wagons specially. The whole lechimoto agalot han nikarot v'yaduot shemibeit hamelech hemo eino tzorech el levaya. If anyone who has a wagon like this, he knows that the king has a hand on this, that the person who's driving in such a wagon, he must be protected by the king. The king will save him from this. So it's like driving away in a police car. You know, you don't need any help. You have the because the fear of the king is on them in the land of Israel, whether in the land of Egypt or in the land of Canaan. Because everybody needed the marichitin, everybody needed the king, because the king had all the food. So nobody's going to make trouble for the king, and these are special agalot for the king. If so, what does it make any difference if the levaya? So it made no difference that Yosef would escort his brothers or not. They didn't need logically any help or any. Because who is a person that will go against the king? So therefore, Yaakov knew that these are the wagons of the king, and there was no necessity for Yosef to to accompany them. And when the brothers said these are the wagons that Yosef sent, so he knows certainly that whoever escorted them, Yosef, it must be that he's doing it because it says in the Torah. He must have been what he learned from his father. This is very important. Therefore, when he thought deeply about these wagons that he sent, and Yosef, therefore he knew that the reason that Yosef sent them was for the fear of God. And this means that he must be his son, because nobody else in the world fears God except for Yaakov's sons. And that's why it says that Yaakov was enlivened. In the book which is called Olot Ephraim, it's not that long, let's try to do it. In the book of Olot Ephraim, he explains that what did Yaakov learn? He learned from the Parsha, from this law of Egla Arufa, that Yosef is still alive. How did he learn this? It says, in other words, Yaakov saw wagons, and he saw that Yosef sent, but it could be that his brothers, his sons, were lying. This could be that his sons were just saying, we were in Egypt, and good news, Dad, Yosef is still alive, and he really wasn't alive. Could be. So he said, how did he know that he was still alive? Because he remembered this law. What's the law? Listen to this. What's the law of the what do we say about this egla arufa, the calf, you break its neck? If a dead body, a Jewish person, a dead body a murdered person is found between two cities, so they measure. So they measure whichever city it's closest to. That city has to bring the cow and break its neck, calf. Just like they physical measure to see which city is closer to the dead body, and to attach this crime to that city. Similarly, a person has to measure himself intellectually, spiritually. What would sin be'eze avon made ze ba'avon atzmo? Also, the city has to think to itself, listen, good, he's closest to us, so just because he's closest to us, we have to bring a cow. We're responsible? So they say, yes, if the Torah says you're responsible, then it must be you really are responsible. So therefore, the city has to make two measurements. One measurement is physical, who's closest, and the other one, they have to make a spiritual measurement. For what sin, what do we do wrong that this body is closest to us? Right? Why did this person die? Maybe the person died because of maybe his family, maybe because of the people of the city. Whoever he's closest to, whoever is closer to the cause of this dead man's death that they find between the two cities, that person has to ask for forgiveness. He caused someone to die. So they have to measure that. If it's closest to our city, it must be that someone in our city caused this person to die somehow or other. Okay, and therefore, Yosef sent Agla Rufa. Kedei Shemetocha Yidbonen Yaakov Eze Chet Goram Yaakov, so that Yaakov will think, what could be the sin that caused me to suffer for these 22 years? He'll find that this was the sin that Yaakov will say, wow, I didn't give proper honor to my father and mother for these 22 years. In other words, I caused my father, Yitzchak. Yaakov said, I caused my father, Yitzchak, pain 22 years. He didn't know where I was. And that's why now Yosef is causing me this pain 22 years. Because I didn't honor my father, so therefore my son didn't honor me. The son that I loved the most. So now he thought, certainly Yosef must be alive. Why? Because if Yosef was dead, if so, Yaakov would think, then it would be, if Yosef was dead, then that would mean that he would be in pain for more than 22 years, right? The pain wouldn't stop. A person, God forbid, you should never know, but if someone dear to you passes away, you never really forget it. The same thing with, now all of a sudden, Yaakov thought to himself, wow, 22 years has passed, and now I'm getting the news that Yosef is still alive. That makes sense. Why? Because now I realize why 22 years. Because that's exactly the amount of time that I didn't give honor to my father. So that's what it means, the Egel Rufa. Because you find a dead body, that you have to measure what was the cause of this. The same thing Yaakov was saying. What was the cause of my thinking that Yosef was dead for 22 years? What's the cause? Because I didn't honor my father 22 years. If Yosef was really dead, then I would be mourning my whole entire life. If so, Yaakov wouldn't know what to depend this punishment on. If it was more than 22 years, therefore, when he saw the agalot, when he saw these wagons And he remembered the word agala is similar to the word agala, egla, arufa. And he realized that 22 years, suddenly everything all came together, and Yaakov was brought back to life. He stopped his mourning. That's all the Kli Yakar. Kli Yakar says. All right, let us learn. Let's see if we have a little bit of time, and we'll learn the Mishnah. Excuse me. Hope we'll have time to do this. A little bit of a complicated Mishnah. Here.